So the first episode is a welcome back, a reintroduction to Jordy and I, this time with these cameras around us.
We have officially leveled up and we're freaking out.
It's weird.
We're not used to
weird.
it. This is a whole new territory for us, but we really, really want to make it work. And
yeah, so today's episode is it's a reintroduction of Jordy and I. We will talk about fixations. I know all of you are hanging to see what our fixations for the last year have been.
That's been the most asked question is fixations.
Yeah.
Fixations coming back. What's happening? We want fixations. Are they going to continue?
They're back. They're bigger than ever.
You can't just get rid of fixations out of your life. It just doesn't happen.
No. So, yeah, that's what today's episode is all about.
We're also going to be discussing some changes within the NDIS space that have happened in the last year. Obviously, there's been a lot. Things happen in the NDIS every day. Things change all the time. So we're just going to address briefly the big things. And, yeah, then we'll get into it.
Let's go. Fixation of the week. Fixation of the week. Fixation of the week. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so you guys are really lucky that you were not here for the last year because I did get fixated on the aliens and the drones happening over New York City. It was over New York. It was over New Jersey, actually.
Yeah.
And the government weren't saying anything about it. It was like a whole big conspiracy theory thing happening. And I feel like it sort of got glazed over that the US government acknowledged that there was aliens.
Yeah.
And nobody really spoke about it.
I can tell you now.
Weird.
Alyssa saying that this was a fixation, but every time we talk about it, it starts it up again.
Yeah.
So she starts being fixated again. She's still very much holding on to it.
And I couldn't wait to talk about it on the pod because I knew that there would be other people that would be fixated on this at the same time that I was, because it was a huge thing. If you were on that side of TikTok, it was huge. And I didn't really have a lot of people to talk about with it. When I did, I kind of seemed crazy. So
she tried to get me into it and I just could not really. I can appreciate it and I found it interesting, but I really wasn't at the level that you were at.
I was in there. I was talking about it at Christmas lunch. Seems like crazy. Family were ready to put me in a mental institution. But, you know, it was a fixation and I was in there for a long time. We never actually found out what the drones were. The US government said that it was safe, that it was not anything that was a threat. Who knows? What? We don't know.
Yeah. That was probably...
Orbs. What are they? What were the orbs? People were talking to the orbs. I feel like I'm crazy talking about it again. But anyway, that was a really, really, really big fixation for a while. There was months of this.
Yeah, I think
Bethany Frankel was talking about it. It was great.
We both went through a bit of a stage where we were fixating on things for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Too. We had many fixations over the last 12 months, but they kind of went for a long time, which isn't like us. I don't know if it's because we didn't have the outlet of the pod to kind of talk about it and get it out there and then move on to the next one. So we're kind of just stuck in our own little worlds with these fixations. But we definitely went through a fair few. I think a lot of mine were based around TV shows because we both had surgery early last year. So a lot of our time was spent recovering and doing all of that stuff. So I watched a lot of TV shows, fixated on a lot of storylines.
I was fixated on Sopranos again.
Yeah.
I've already watched the whole season multiple times, but I watched it again and became fixated with it.
I think a lot of new seasons came out too when we were recovering. So I was fixating on shows that I'd fixated on before, but just the new season. Yeah. Which was really entertaining for me, but wouldn't be very entertaining to talk about because we already talked about it before. But other than that, I think that I can't even honestly remember most of our fixations. I feel like there was so many.
There was so many. That's us. We go through a lot of different fixations. One fixation I will say that we've stuck at though is Jordy started Greek lessons to improve her Greek, and I started Spanish lessons just to even start learning Spanish.
Yeah.
Because I actually am a Spanish citizen. I know, little white girl, but I am. My dad's Spanish and I've gotten citizenship through that. So I thought I should learn the language, and we have kept it up. Go us. That is a long-standing fixation.
It really has.
And I don't want to give it up. Like, I want to keep going with it.
No, I think that it's turned into a hobby for both of us. And it's interesting when we talk about it together. We're like, oh, yeah, this and that. And we can, like, relate on it, even though we're speaking different languages, because it's all, you know, just learning a language is very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
It
very
is
hard as an adult.
hard, yeah.
I grew up in a Greek-speaking household for a lot of the time, and I picked it up as a kid. But, you know, when you kind of learn something but you don't really learn the foundations of it, you just learn it by hearing. So that's kind of what happened. And through my lessons, I've learned that I learned a dialect of Greek that does not exist.
Oz-Greek.
Which is called Oz-Greek or Greeklish.
Yeah.
And so having this tutor, I've learned that what I thought was Greek is not Greek.
It's not Greek, yeah.
And she's educated me on that. So that's been a great experience. But I think it's also like just learning the culture from someone that lives in the country and, you know, the culture is their life, you know.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because even for me, a lot of the things that I feel as the Greek community here, we hold on to traditions that don't necessarily continue in Greece, but it's our way of trying to hold on to that.
To it. Yeah.
Which is really interesting to talk about with another person my age over there. And all of my tutors that I've had have been really great and they're really, really cool. And so it's just really cool to just be able to be in a space where you can talk and, you know, learn about each other's cultures. I have to say they both are terrified of the wildlife in Australia.
Yeah.
And it's
I'm terrified
about
of
the
wildlife in Australia, to be honest with you. I don't blame them.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's like definitely a fixation that's turned into more of a hobby for both of us.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome that now I actually understand Spanish because with my abuela, so my grandmother growing up, she just spoke Spanish, but I didn't spend a lot of time with her. But every time that we went over her house, like my parents would speak Spanish with her. And as a child, I learned to just zone it out.
Yeah.
Like completely like go into my own little world. So for me, it's even just understanding it because I would just literally zone out if somebody even tried to speak Spanish to me. Whereas now I'm actually listening, I'm understanding it. So that's like a big epiphany that I've had, which is awesome. But yes, hopefully we keep going down this road. Are we going to address the fact that you are teeny tiny
look a little bit different?
Yes. And the fact that you've become a gym junkie and I never see you anymore?
Yeah. Look, that's definitely been a fixation, has been the gym. It's just something that I just crave. I don't know. I don't want to sound like one of those people that's like, oh,
You're one of those people.
Have to go to the gym, but I am one of those people.
You are.
It's just, I think it's just, I've found an outlet for myself that I've really enjoyed, and it really does help my mental health a lot. Helps me to switch off from work. It's kind of that, because work, I can do it anywhere, anytime, often comes home with me. It's that turn off, okay, I've gone to the gym, now I go home, it's done. It's like a break in the day.
Yeah.
So I've kind of really incorporated that into my routine a lot. But yeah, I'm a little bit kind of turned into a bit of a gym junkie.
I need some of that energy. And I get what you're saying because it is a really good way of switching off and being present. I find when I'm at the gym, I'm very present. I haven't been into the gym for a while though. I need to go and start doing that.
But in saying that, like I do go through my periods of not wanting to go, it being a massive drag, just wanting to not, and then I don't go and then I get back into it. So it ebbs and flows. Like it's not a consistent thing for me either.
Yeah.
But I try really
Been
hard.
pretty consistent, I would say.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alyssa will call me and she'll be like, hey, what are you doing? I'll be like, I'm just at the gym.
Yeah. Or I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
I'm
Or,
just in the car about to go in the gym.
or we'll talk on the way home and then I'll be like, all right, I just got to the gym.
Yeah. Gym life. Hardcore. No, don't be sorry. I'm glad you found an outlet. Are we going to talk about some of the changes that have happened in the NDIS? Because I feel like there was a lot of change last year.
A lot.
And I know a lot of people would have been like, where are Jordy and Alyssa talking on these really important topics?
Yeah.
And we felt like we wanted to. But at the same time, it was changing so much that I feel like we couldn't even keep up. And it was like just when we were discussing that we were going to talk on a topic, just even on our Instagram that we were going to talk on a topic, then all of a sudden something else would come up and it would be like, oh, now we have to talk about that. And it just became a lot. So I think that we need to address some of those changes today so you guys can get a feel of, you know, what we think and how we feel and our opinions on the subject as well.
100%. I think there's a lot of proposed change as well.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, we're going to do this. We don't know when. We don't know how. Just keep waiting.
Yeah.
And a lot of that uncertainty in the space, like we didn't really want to speak on it without being able to say like this is what has been released. And even now there's a lot of stuff that is still up in the air, but we can at least kind of have a bit of more of an idea of where things are going and kind of give our opinions on it as we do.
Yeah.
And, you know, just kind of explain how we as people in the space feel and are navigating that ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So a big one I think that happened last year that was huge for myself and for, you know, a lot of other allied health is the changes to the travel. So the amount of money that we could charge for travel.
That was a massive change.
It was.
A lot of talk.
Yes.
I was very surprised by the outcome.
So obviously this came from, they've consulted participants on this and participants, rightly so, have turned around and said, you know, allied health, behaviour support, you know, yada, 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 are all charging too much for travel. Okay. I agree. Coming from a participant perspective, I can see how they would think that that was a complete rip-off. But one thing I feel like the NDIA didn't do well is when hearing those frustrations from the participants, I feel like they didn't then have a discussion with them around why allied health, behaviour support are charging that much for travel. And so then I don't think that there was discussions had around how that would affect the participant. Okay, so then what happened was when they put in these changes to how much we could charge for travel, a lot of OTs, speech, behaviour support, then had to recalibrate and look at where different participants lived and go, okay, well, we can only see you at this time during the day because we've got a participant that is 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there from you, so that they could combine that travel altogether. That then limited the choice and control of the participant to then choose when they get to see that allied health. So, for example, if your child normally saw a speech therapist at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the speech therapist might turn around and say, well, I can no longer do that time because I'm not in the area at that time. It needed to make it worth their while to travel that far. So, you know, where we are, I can travel 30 minutes there and back to a participant, but I'm charging half the rate of what I was before.
And I think that in the beginning, when all of these travel changes were coming out and all, basically the whole allied health community were up in arms about it, understandably, I going to be honest,
Yeah.
I kind of, as a support coordinator, was like, why is this such a big deal?
Yeah.
And I think I was coming from the point of view of, I'm the one that has to make sure everyone has hours and funding within the limitations of a person's funding.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was like, well, actually, travel costs really impact a person's budget because
Yes.
at the end of the day, if they have 52 hours for OT, for example, for the year, most of that is chewed up by travel costs, so they don't actually have a lot of face-to-face time with people. So I was kind of like, coming from a support coordinator's point of view, I didn't mind the changes coming out, not thinking about the impact that it was going to have on, participants and the providers and the sustainability in the sector either.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So then, if you look at it, like I said, from, a 30 minutes there and a 30 minutes back, that is time that could be spent with a participant. So that is why speech, OT, behaviour support are like, well, I'm not going to travel the 30 minutes there and back unless it's worth my while, because I could be spending that time with a participant and doing practical things rather than driving in a car.
Yeah.
So some things that allied health and behaviour support have had to do is make that time worthwhile, using that time to make phone calls, whether that's using, some AI app to do your notes, with the speak to text or whatever they call it, using that time to then do all of those things. So that's a massive change that has happened. It was also a massive change that people thought that the NDIA were going to reverse. So there was a massive petition online on LinkedIn with allied health, behaviour support all getting involved, people really putting that pressure on the government to reverse it.
And I think that came about the fact that the NDIA changed their decision on art therapy and music therapy as well.
Yeah.
Because they were so set in stone that they weren't going to change it, and then they did. And so I think that everyone thought, if we really band together and we get this, we speak about it and we get this across the line, they're going to change it, and then they didn't.
Yeah. And unfortunately, for a lot of OTs and speech, especially, I've noticed a lot of them have actually said it's not viable to have a business under the NDIS with these changes, the travel changes. A lot of them stopped taking on NDIS participants. So it did become something that at first was meant to be beneficial for the participant, but in the end, yes, I can see there's benefits, like obviously with their funding, but then for some people it has come to a detriment as well. So, for myself, I didn't really think that it was that big of a deal. I've made it work for myself. But I know, like I said, for a lot of OTs in speech who are already, I feel like, under the pump, especially in regional areas where there's such a need for them, I can see them saying, well, this is not viable, and I could be, spending that time actually seeing a participant. So I can see both sides here, but basically travel changes are here and they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. Even with that massive push, we thought that they might reverse, but they didn't. And here we are with these travel changes and trying to make it work.
Yeah, and I don't know if it necessarily correlates, but it's just interesting that now a lot of providers in the area also don't have capacity to take on new participants.
Yeah.
They're all, putting in more boundaries around their caseloads and things. So it kind of has a flow-on effect with all of it. One of the biggest changes that I have seen that, not going to lie, is the bane of my existence as a support coordinator is funding periods. And there's so many things to address here. I think overall, funding periods, I understand why they were implemented, but they're not for everyone. And I think it really does impact the individuality of the NDIS plans for a participant and the flexibility that they can use within their plans.
Yeah.
In some instances, I'm like, actually funding periods make my life easier. They're really good. It means that, we know exactly, we can set a routine. It helps with not overspending. But for the more complex participant whose needs change all the time, it doesn't work for them. And I think that they've put in this big rule around funding periods and these such rigidity
Mm.
that doesn't have to be there.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things where you'll suggest, oh, can we do this and that to make it more sustainable for the participant? And then we get back, oh, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
But you can.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things with that. But basically what funding periods are is they're kind of like mini plan dates within a plan. So the NDIS will say, you've got $150,000 for the year, and every 3 months we're going to allocate a portion of that to be released, and you can only use that funding within the 3 months. If you don't use all the funding, then it rolls over into the next period, which is great. But if you do use all the funding before the funding period the next one is released, you have to go with that support.
Yeah.
Which I understand they're trying to stop people from overspending, but if someone is chronically underfunded and needs that support, what's happening?
Yeah, and I think for behaviour support in particular, there's been a real big push. Obviously, we work with, complex participants who have different behaviours of concern. Behaviours of concern are really, they're not something that we can, determine outright when they're going to happen or how often they're going to happen or what can trigger it.
Or even report
straight away. But there's been a big push for behaviour support not to be included in these funding, what did you call it?
Funding periods.
Funding periods for that reason, because if a person, hits crisis, then, we have to get involved more than ever. And we might be really intensely working with the participant for, weekly, maybe multiple times a week, doing lots of different things. And then that might go on for 3 months. And then we might go, oh, okay, they're settled now and we don't need to see them as frequently. But we're different in OT and speech in that way. That, OT and speech are normally very, we see them routinely. Weekly, fortnightly. But behaviour support, it's like we go where we need to. So it's a little bit silly that we're included in those. But I did have a participant that did have a crisis, and we were able to get all of his funds released and behaviour support excluded from the funding restrictions. So you're calling it funding periods. So we managed to get that, all sorted for him.
And it is possible, but it's also hard. And sometimes, it might take 3 or 4 weeks to get that released. And that's 3 or 4 weeks of crisis that have had to be managed without any funding available.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, we'll put in these funding periods to help with this. And there is this option to help if there is a crisis or whatever, but the time frames that it takes to get there and the red tape that you have to jump over, makes it kind of really difficult to get there. So funding periods are just the norm now. Everyone gets them. You can't not have them. You can try to negotiate on, front-loading funding and doing all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, if the person clicks the button and doesn't want to do it, it is what it is.
Yeah. I think, again, for me personally, as a behaviour support practitioner, it's really frustrating because initially when I do the initial assessment and then I might need to write an interim plan, and that could take 5 hours. So then I might not have a lot of time to then actually get to know that participant. And so then I might not then see them for another 3 months.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of time that I could be working on with the participant, building rapport, getting to know them, getting to know all of the things about them that I need for the comp plan, which then, could take 10 plus hours. So I think that's the frustrating part of it for me is if I have to turn around and say, well, I've got to use a chunk of this for report writing, and I probably won't have enough to actually see you and do anything with you until maybe May or whatever.
Yeah, which, people then disengage, and it's hard to get them re-engaged and kind of address those behaviours. And I think the way they kind of went about it too, it was like they released it on the statement that they were going to do it. And then by that Monday, it was implemented.
Yes.
And we were like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
What's happening? Participants were freaking out. Like, it was a whole debacle, really.
Yeah.
And I actually went on a community practice forum and we spoke about it. And the main thing that I said was that in terms of communication with participants, we don't know what to tell them because we don't have enough information to prepare them and to tell them what we know, because there's nothing really out there, and it just gets released and there wasn't any guidelines really on it.
Yeah.
And personally, I think that like 1 month funding periods are way easier to navigate than 3 monthly, because you can kind of determine what a person's going to need in a month rather than 3 months.
Yes.
It's a long time.
Yes.
A really, really long time in the NDIS space. And things change all the time. And I think that kind of leads into the flexibility within plans as well, and specifically around therapies.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone knows core budget, very flexible in how you use it, but the system that the NDIS were using to generate plans, PACE, was set up in a way that was not flexible at all. So we were being told that it was always that, in IDL, so improved daily living skills, that if people had funding, it was flexible. The planners would recommend that they use it on this and that, but you didn't have to necessarily. So when these PACE plans started coming through and it had occupational therapy, speech therapy, physiotherapy written in the plans, plan managers were then going, oh, we can't fund for anything, like we can't pay for anything outside of these 3 areas. Sorry, basically. And it kind of just happened overnight, really, because plan managers need to do what they need to do to protect themselves too. And so we kind of fell back into this place where the therapies were being stated, which isn't supposed to be the whole premise of the NDIS. And recently, actually, they've kind of gone, oh, yeah, kind of made a mistake with that. We'll try and fix it. So now that they don't put that in there and it's just a generic assessments, reports and blah, blah, blah. But there was a whole year there where we basically had to be like to participants, sorry, you can't see your psychologist that you've been seeing for 5 years because the planner only put occupational therapy and speech therapy in your plan. And then they would come back with us with, isn't it supposed to be flexible? Yes, it is. But there's not a lot we can do. So I think there's been lots of transitional periods within the last 12 months. There's been lots of changes, and everyone seems to have a handle on most of it now in terms of like the funding periods and stuff. It just takes some time getting used to, but it still causes lots of issues.
Absolutely. And I think one big one that the media sort of ran with as well was this idea of people with autism being faded off the
and
NDIS,
psychosocial disability.
and psychosocial disability as well. So that was another big one, and people were up in arms about that.
Understandably, because when you are being told that you or your loved one or your kid are going to not have access to the support that they need, but also not being given any information as to when, how, why, it's scary.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I think as well, for little children as well, I know I've been there with my own son, trying to get that diagnosis is really difficult. I think people think that an autism diagnosis is really easy to get. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, given my son is a teenager now. But when he was younger, it was actually really hard to, A, get anyone to believe me that there was, ASD there, and then B, to actually get the diagnosis. It cost me over $1,000 to get. We had to do over 3 sessions with, a psych and a speech and all that sort of stuff. So I think that sort of, there's a feeling of like undermining that. And look, I get it. Autism, I think from what I read, it was, the number 1 diagnosis on the NDIS at the moment. So they feel like they have to step in and they have to rein it in somehow. I get that. But if we're looking at the individual rather than the diagnosis and what the individual needs, which is what all of our reports and everything focuses on is the individual, I don't know why they then would focus on one diagnosis in particular. I think that they need to rein it in other ways, focusing again on the individual and what the individual needs, which they are trying to do.
I was going to say this kind of feeds into a whole conversation of, you know, the proposal of thriving kids and even the impairments rather than the disability, like the diagnoses and all of that stuff, which luckily for you guys, we're going to have whole episodes on.
Episodes on them. A whole episode on
whole
each
episode.
one. So, we won't dive into that too much, but we're acknowledging it. We know that it's something that has been really heavily in the media, particularly at the end of last year. I felt like I was seeing a lot and a lot of people having a lot of opinions about it. So I'd like us to have an opinion about it too, and we will.
Damn straight.
Yeah. And it might actually shock some people what our opinions are on those things, but I'm going to keep tight-lipped. So, I feel like there was a lot of change that happened within 2025.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, people are going to be like, there was this and there was that and there was this, but there was too much for us to be able to keep an eye on. But also a lot of things that kind of were proposed and then disappeared. And then, you know, so there's so many things, but we're really just going to be back in your ears and on the screen now.
On the screen.
Bringing
my good side.
Bringing you back the debriefing pod with Jordy and Alyssa.
Woo-woo.